No, sorry, you must take a PCR test, no antigen test. It's not allowed. Maaf.
But ma'am, how long does a PCR test take? That's not what the airline said.
It takes 24 hours to get the result back. You can't pay to get it earlier. It doesn't exist.
Well, if we can't pay to get it earlier, we'll miss our flight.
Tidak, tidak. You have to get a PCR test. Maaf. So sorry.
Welcome to So You Want to Travel channel. So You Want to Travel channel. That's a tongue twister. I probably should have thought about that before I named the channel. Anyway, welcome. I'm going to give you tips and tricks that I've learned along the way of being a travel agent for over 21 years to help you on your travels so you don't make mistakes that can cost a lot of money and can cause a lot of headaches. Today's topic is actually on something that has been on the minds of a lot of people, and that's international travel during the pandemic or during COVID. As you notice at the beginning of the video, there are some mistakes that can be very costly. So here are a few tips so you can avoid the mistakes. Mistake number one. When you used to book a trip or book flights, you could book your flight and not read any of the small print, just book it and you were done. Nowadays, that is not what you do. You do not want to do that. All the information that the airline sends you, you want to make sure you read every bit of it, because there are links in that information. There's information about forms you need to fill out, print and take with you to the airport. Not have on your phone. You need to have it printed and take it with you. There's apps you need to download. It's very important that you read everything. As you see here on the screen, this is all the information that I was sent for my most recent international flight. And it was very specific. And they will send you this information prior to your departure. So just make sure that you read everything that the airline is sending you, because it's not just fine print anymore. It's actually information that you absolutely need. That being said, mistake number two you want to avoid is not going to the airport early. You absolutely want to be at the airport 3 hours prior to departure, because you never know if there's a test that you need to take, or if just something odd comes up with COVID. You just never know nowadays. Give yourself time, especially if you have a family. Give yourself plenty of time so that you can be calm. You can just take your time. You don't have to rush. You can get through security and get to the other side, have a meal with your family. Just make sure that you don't wait until the last minute. Give yourself plenty of time to get to the airport and check in and get all the forms filled out that you need to get done. Mistake number three. Don't be uneducated as to the test that you are required to have for the airline and for the country that you're going to, because they can be different. In our situation, when we flew from Bali to Jakarta, all we had to do was breathe into a bag for our test. And that test is not sufficient for Singapore Air. That test is not sufficient to fly to Singapore, and that test isn't sufficient to go to the US. That being said, all the countries have different tests that they require. So you need to be educated as to which test is required. In our situation, we were told by the technician that we needed to have a PCR test. Well, PCR test was not going to work because our flight was in a few hours. I knew that we needed an antigen test. They refused to give it to us. We had to call the airline and have the airline on the phone so that they can say, yes, all that is required is the antigen test. Otherwise, we would have missed our flight, which would have cost money. So whatever you do, be educated, and you have to keep looking because it can change all the time. It changes all the time. So just be educated as to which test is required for your airline and for the country that you're going to. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot 2 very important things that you need to watch out for. First, you need to check to make sure how many hours in advance you need to not only take your test, but how long it's valid for after you take your test. Some countries, you have to get it within 24 hours, some 48, some 72. So make sure you check that, and because of that fact, and since it's always possible it can come back positive, you also want to have a travel insurance that will cover you if you do get stopped because you test positive and you have to quarantine at a hotel. So those 2 things are very important to look out for as well. Mistake number 4 is not knowing about the layover that you're going to have, knowing about the situation. And what I mean by that is, in our scenario, we were doing a layover at Singapore airport, and anybody who's been there knows that that is one of the best airports to have a layover in. Right now, however, during COVID, not necessarily, because if you're not in their bubble, then you're not allowed in the main part of the airport. You're put into a room, a big room with a bunch of people with very little meal options. And in fact, as you see here, it was really just vending machines. There were some, you could order food, but really those options weren't that great either. And not a lot of charging stations, which was actually very interesting to me. So I'm currently at the Singapore airport, and because of COVID, we are all in this room. We can't leave. So, bad thing is, charging stations are far in between, and yeah, this is not the best condition, but we couldn't get a hotel because our layover here is not long enough, and it should be 6 hours or longer for it to be worth actually paying the money, because it's 292 Singapore dollars for a hotel for 6 hours. So we're gonna stay here and enjoy this. Mistake number 5 to avoid is getting the cheapest ticket. On your international flight, if it doesn't cost too much more to get a fully refundable ticket, purchase the fully refundable ticket. Because if something goes wrong, at least you can get a refund or make a change to that flight. And that's the biggest, the longest flight, so that's the most expensive flight. So if you can, spend a little bit more and make sure you get a fully refundable ticket, or a ticket that can be changed, just in case, again, with test forms, just in case something happens, you don't get charged a bunch of money for changing your flight. Mistake number 6 is not taking the time to stop over in certain places just so that you can kind of relax, because I'm telling you guys, right now it's stressful. If you have the opportunity to stop over at least one night, do so, because not only does it allow you to collect your thoughts, but then you can take a shower, get some rest for the next day of travel. In our situation, because we were coming from Indonesia back to the US, it was beneficial for us to do one stopover in Indonesia for one night, and then once we got to the US, we did another stopover. If you have the opportunity, definitely do it, because it will take the stress away from you for sure. So I hope these list of mistakes that I personally ran into helps you so that you can avoid them on your international flight, your next international flight during COVID. All in all, it's a new world of travel. With COVID, there are just new things that we're learning. Everybody's learning. Different countries have different experiences. They require different things. So just be careful, be mindful when you're out there, because everybody wants to get out and travel again. That's one thing that everybody was so excited about with regards to the vaccine, being able to travel again. That being said, you still need to make sure that you're educated when it comes to traveling so you can be your own advocate. If you ever have any questions, I have linked below my website. I also have a travel guide that you can have access to. It's a free travel guide. If you're interested, go down to the website and I can shoot you off the travel guide. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you guys again and talking to you about travel, some more tips and tricks to help you on your new experiences in the travel world. Other than that, I will talk to you later.